Welcome to the Startup Grind.
So our guest tonight is Michael Branning, President of Avtec, and you've been in that role since 1993. I'm going to give you the list of highlights, right? So and most of you know this, that if you're from Avtec, you know this already. Since 2007, under Michael's leadership, we've seen annual sales grow from $6.5 million to $36 million annually as of last year. Avtec employs around 130 full-time employees in Lexington, South Carolina. And for the past 3 years has been named one of South Carolina's fastest growing companies, and hopefully you're on track for that again for 2015, yeah?
We'll see.
Yeah, so you wear a lot of hats in Avtec. I'm going to mention these things because we'll come back to it later. All of the strategic long-term thinking, you direct worldwide sales, operations, product development, marketing. You're a busy guy. Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Michael Branning. So just a quick note on our format. How many of you have not been to a startup grind before? Awesome. Well, please come back. So basically the format, if you haven't figured it out already, we're going to chat for a few minutes and probably about half an hour or so. I'm going to set a timer so I don't overdo it, right? And then we'll open it up to the floor for some questions if you guys have some specific questions that we didn't cover that you want Michael to talk about with you. So I didn't mention at all what Avtec does. So why don't we start by you giving us kind of a 30,000-foot view of Avtec?
Sure, happy to do that, and thanks for having me here. Avtec is a software company that makes a voice over IP, a mission-critical command center product that's used by a variety of companies to speak to their mobile workforce doing some kind of important mission. Examples would be airlines at an airport managing the aircraft to get them brought to the gate, turned around and back in the air, railroad dispatching, safe movement of trains, and also for business purposes, public safety, dispatching police, fire, EMS, power utilities to restore power in an ice storm. When things are going bad or need to go very, very efficiently, our products used from a command center, usually connected to mobile radio and to telephony.
Okay, and you guys have customers not just in South Carolina, worldwide. And you're a global company.
Yeah, primarily North America, but we have presence in South America, Latin America, in a variety of other countries around the world.
So I mentioned when I introduced you, you've been the president of Avtec since 1993. But we had a chance to talk yesterday and found out you've pretty much only had the one job. You've worked for Avtec more or less your whole career. So you know all the history. So can you take us back to the early years? I know your dad started Avtec in 1979. So maybe take us back to the early years. How is Avtec different then than it is today?
Wow, that's a lot of territory to cover. It's 36 years.
We can break it down.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we can break it down if you want.
Well, the company got its start, it was just out of necessity. My dad was a middle-class engineer, worked for a company called Wabco. They sold their radio business to a company in Missouri, and we moved there in 1978. And my dad was born in Miami, as I was, and we moved back to South Carolina a year later, and he started Avtec. And the name, we joke, it stands for Adventure to Escape Cold. So his house, the house hadn't sold, and so there really wasn't a job in the area. So he just worked as a consultant to the prior company for a year, did some electronic products. He had radio experience, he had electronics experience, he had software experience, and so he built a small console system, which is what our product's called, that was used in railroad environments to dispatch trains. And so that was the start, my dad in the basement. After a couple years of small projects, we moved into a storefront. He hired a few people, including me. I did all kinds of stuff from mow the grass to I used to make wiring harnesses by putting 2 nails in a board and wrapping wire like this around it and cutting it, stripping it, and cutting it. so manufacturing. So I did a little bit of everything. As we grew, he ended up writing a specification for a communication system for the Santa Fe Railroad in Topeka, Kansas, and he was allowed to bid on that project. He won the project, and they funded the development of our first console systems. That led to a bigger facility, some more manufacturing people. We started building systems for the Santa Fe. We did 7 or 8 systems for them, and then we asked, could we sell this to others, and there were other railroads that needed it, so that kind of led to growth in the railroad industry through the early 80s, and the company grew to maybe about 30 or 35 people, and so we had people that were stuffing print circuit boards with resistors and soldering them and making wiring harnesses, and we had 1 or 2 people writing code on green screen terminals, and all kinds of relatively archaic technology with big cabinets full of circuit boards like old phone systems. But systems worked well, and we captured a pretty significant part of the railroad industry. Then we realized we'd captured a pretty significant part of the railroad industry, and there wasn't a whole lot more to capture. And so what are we going to do? And so the whole idea is, are you going to sell more products to the existing customer base, or are you going to take that product and sell it to other customers? So we chose the latter path, and we in 1 year, 88 to 89, we went from 100% railroad sales to 20% railroad sales. And we managed to break even that year. We captured some projects for a national forest in California, the California Highway Patrol, the City of Toronto for their emergency, their ambulance service, ambulance dispatching. I think a power company, Tinker Air Force Base. I might have the year a little bit wrong, but we just branched out to anybody that could have a command center that used mobile radio, and needed, especially if they needed something special, because we did a lot of customization, both the hardware and the software. So we spread out to these different industries. That let us grow a little further. I had, in the meantime, I had worked at the company part-time while I was going to college at Clemson and getting my engineering degree. And I did a little bit of everything from lay out circuit boards to stamp out little metal brackets in the machine shop, to assemble boards, to solder them, to purchasing. Just got to take a taste of just about everything except for sales. Got out of school, got my engineering degree, and I'm like, I'm not going to work for Dad. I'm going to go someplace else. And so I started interviewing, and I got a taste of the real world. And 1986 just wasn't a great time to find a job, especially in Batesburg, South Carolina. So I grudgingly took a design job with Avtec, and I started doing microprocessor-based design. We built all kinds of embedded controllers that typically these were boxes or circuit cards that had a very small processor with a very small program that would do some kind of function like send touchstones back and forth to a box that might be 100 miles away that was connected to a radio and would remotely control that. So and it was just part of what we had to do to adapt to every different customer system. So did that for a few years. We grew a little bit more. I took over the hardware engineering group, and I worked with a really sharp guy who ran the software group, and we worked together and started working on a digital system. We used a technology called TDM, time division multiplex, and we came up with most of the architectural concepts and did a lot of the implementation of a next generation system we called Dispatch, because it used digital signal processors, which allowed us to standardize. It was part of a shift from customized hardware with a little bit of software to more and more standardized proprietary hardware at that time with some tweakable software and configurable software. You could have databases that would change the behavior, so you could take a standard product and adapt it to multiple customers' needs. Okay. So over time, we made that system pretty robust and had a lot of success. And 1997, we brought in a salesman who had some airline experience, and we captured a very small project for Delta Airlines, and I was real involved in that, and we managed to, that was our toehold into the airline industry, and today, we've managed to capture about 75% of that industry, both air-to-ground flight dispatch centers, one of which is, I'll mention, we just cut over this week the American Airlines IOC, Integrated Operations Center, which is a combination of flight dispatch from American Airlines and U.S. Airways. It's a very, very big system, 240 flight dispatchers, and operates 24 hours a day in a new $150 million building in Dallas. So
Congrats.
We're really, really pleased, and the team did a great job. I mean, we've got lots of dedicated, smart people that have been out there for weeks and weeks and weeks. It's been a year to put this thing together, and so anyway, I digress.
No, that's fine. No. Well, and that kind of brings, and you kind of brought me up to a point in your history
Sure.
where I think it's probably a pivotal change, right? So you went from primarily a hardware-based company that sold a little bit of software,
Yes.
and now you're a software company that sells a little bit of hardware.
Mhm.
Can you talk, can you talk about some of the difficulties that might have come with making that transition? Obviously, it might be a different kind of workforce, different skill sets, maybe different approaches to service, sales. How did that fundamentally change your company?
We got, what, 3 hours? Is that?
Yeah.
Well, I'll just kind of continue the story to answer that question. So that was kind of a transitionary period. We had originally we had several hardware engineers and one software engineer. About that time, we had an equal number of hardware and software engineers, and whereas today, it's more like a 10 or 15 to 1 ratio. So in those days, there wasn't enough computing horsepower to do all the audio processing, to do all the specialized interfaces that you could do today with PCs. So it was a necessity to do the proprietary hardware. But over time, the proprietary hardware is very difficult to maintain. Parts become obsolete. You're constantly respinning boards, and you need to maintain backward compatibility because these systems last a long time. And by the way, they have to run continuously for 10 years with no outages. Or if bad things happen and people call me in the middle of the night, and I don't want any more of that. So over time, we realized we could do more and more on the Windows platform, and today our Scout product, I can deploy a complete communication system just on Windows PCs. I could build a very small one on a single laptop, plug a USB headset into it. It could talk via IP to a Cisco phone system and a VoIP phone system. It could control radios from Motorola, Tate, Kenwood, ICOM, all these different vendors, and you could simultaneously do all that from that one laptop. And that's the real power of our platform. And today we do manufacture some proprietary hardware, but it's only stuff that's really required to be the glue to make a system work. We have a little gateway box that we manufacture, solid state, rugged. The Alaska Railroad uses them. They're in little huts all along the track, and you can get to the huts like 2 months out of the year in a helicopter. So they have to be very reliable to work in cold temperatures. And they take a radio that doesn't have an IP, an internet protocol port on them, and converts them to IP because our system only works with IP.
And so I understand what your product does because I looked into it.
All right.
But for some of the folks here that
You want
might,
a job?
I'm good. I'm set. So break it down for me. I want to make sure that I understand.
Sure.
How your system works. So can I tell you what I think it does, and you tell me if I'm
Absolutely.
right or wrong? So fire rescue, so you've got a fire rescue system, and you've got some guys have Motorola radios, and some guys have another brand of radios.
Yeah. Sure.
And you need those radios to talk to each other and also talk to the central dispatch system. The Scout system, and before that, the dispatch system that you guys did, would provide the interface or kind of the matrix that would allow all those systems to talk to each other, right?
Yeah, that's
More
definitely.
or less, that's
Yeah, that's
okay.
definitely.
Okay, just want to make sure
definitely
that's
a component of it. If you really think about the system, it has really 3 key components. You have a user interface, which provides speakers, desk microphones, foot switches, headset jack box, and a user interface. And it's programmable, typically touchscreen, is our software. That's one of our specialties. A very configurable user interface, so every customer, it can be different. We have services that go, trained engineers that can go out and provide workshops and basically consult and collaborate and help them design their user interface to be optimal for their operation. The users can log in and bring their user interface to their position, even though maybe a PC dies, they move to another desk, log in, and keep working. So that user interface is very, very powerful, and it gives them access to all the different resources, the radios from any manufacturer, the telephones, circuits from anybody, auto dials, all kinds of different functions, aux IOs. We have fire stations where they open the garage doors for the fire station. They can change the traffic signal outside. They can turn on generators, all that from
you need
one.
a consumer version for like I would use that.
Donald, we'll sell it to Donald Trump. It might be priced out of the consumer market.
So Scout is highly configurable.
Yes.
With that comes maybe some challenges in terms of you're a user that hasn't used a system like that before, or a new operator. How much is service and training then now a part of your business model?
Well, I think a typical system, it's mostly software licenses. There's a bundle of services that are very necessary. Either we need to perform them or one of our channel partners. We have a great bunch of channel partners all over the United States and a few internationally that understand the system well and can implement a system. But training is really important for sort of the administration of the system, getting reports out of it, changing the configuration. But surprisingly, the training of the operators is pretty easy, and that's because our system is extremely configurable. We can often make it look a lot like the prior system they were using, no matter what brand it was. They'll often come in and go, oh, those are our lines. They'll recognize the names, the colors, the layout, and it really, typically the operator training can be just a few hours, and they can be up and running it and doing pretty much error-free operation. So,
Michael, what do you love about your job?
well, I get to work with a lot of great people. I mean, somebody I hired recently made the comment, says you're the average of the top 5 people you hang around with most of the time. So I like being around smart people that challenge me. Thankfully, they don't act. I try not to be intimidating, and they don't act that way. And they challenge me, and I like to learn. I've learned so many different things. You mentioned the transition to software. One of the biggest challenges there is learning about transition to software licensing, because it's very easy to sell a big cabinet full of cards for a significant amount of money, and then you say, oh, here's a little tiny device that you plug in your computer and it enables all this stuff. It does the same thing, but gosh, I only want to pay a little bit for the small thing, and I'll pay a lot for this big thing. So, communicating the value proposition of software, because we've got dozens and dozens of engineers, highly trained people. We have USC grads, Clemson grads, Georgia Tech, a lot of different universities, and they work really hard to make this stuff rock solid, and it's expensive to do that and to maintain it. So.
What do you hate about? No, I'm just kidding. What do you?
You have 3 hours? No.
If,
I'm kidding.
So along the same lines, though, if you could have another job, what would it be? What would you want to do differently?
I've been pretty fortunate to be exposed to a lot of business stuff, and it's funny. I don't spend a lot of time thinking, oh wow, you've learned all this stuff. Sometimes it just comes out. I'll talk to somebody and I go, wow, I guess I did know a lot about that. And one of the ways I developed a lot of my business skills, because I'm an engineer, I didn't have any real business training, was I joined an organization called Vistage about 11 years ago. Dan Wertenberg is the chair of that, and he's been a coach during that time, and I hired a CEO coach through Dan, a guy named Jay Veerling out of Cincinnati, Ohio, and taught me a lot. I've got a great board of advisors with different skill sets, and the speakers at Vistage have been phenomenal. And so I've just pieced together, it's almost like a 1 day a month MBA. And so I love all the different things I've learned about, from psychology to management to delegation and other things. So I think I would enjoy doing some mentoring with small business. I mean, I'm an engineer. I like to problem solve, and my staff will tell me a lot of times they're like, no solutions, because I'll jump to that space too quickly. But
So I'm glad you brought up mentoring. So that was actually the next question on my list.
well, I read it upside down.
Yeah, there you go. So obviously, I think then you would say that mentoring is still an important part of your experience, where you still depend on a team of advisors. Have there been specific instances then where your mentor, your team of advisors have helped you see something you didn't see before, where you had to pivot, change, like, gosh, I didn't see that, we need to change direction?
There are a lot of times. I mean, what Jay says, every strong person's got a flat spot. I think I've got 2 or 3 of them, and he's learned what they are. I know what his are, and so we make a pretty good team, and he'll push me really hard to do something I'm uncomfortable with. And often they've been, there are people sitting in this audience that are here because he pushed me to do something, and they were definitely the right decisions, and we've been very successful because of that. One story I like to tell that I really believe in. We had a speaker, Peter Schutz, who was the CEO of Porsche from 1981 to '89. He was actually an engineer, a diesel engineer. He got a lot of grief for that, but he spoke, and he actually wrote a book about called The Driving Force, and one of his big principles is that you need to make democratic decisions, and that will allow you to execute dictatorially. Versus a lot of companies make dictatorial decisions, and then they try to execute democratically, and it all falls apart because people aren't aligned. So I learned a lot about alignment, and I was telling you about the history of the company. One of the biggest difficult transitions was transitioning to voice over IP and software. And in the mid-2000s, we had some really good success in the early parts. After 9/11, we captured some military contracts, and they were very profitable, and we actually had some really good years. Our sales peaked up, and we paid our taxes, put the money in the bank, and then from 2005 through 2007, I spent all of it. And then I borrowed money, and it looked very.
You spent it all on product development.
Yeah,
on developing.
absolutely. We had to downsize. We had a lot of manufacturing capability, and people weren't demanding that product anymore, and we had to downsize. And that was that's probably the worst time in my life. It was, couldn't sleep. My dad and I were at odds, and he was out of the business, and he just didn't understand what I was doing. And smart guy, making all kinds of logical points. The issue was I was taking a lot more risk than he was comfortable with, and we just were at loggerheads. And he was good enough to let me, run with the ball, and we turned things around. We got Scout finished. We just knew it was the right product. It was the right thing for the market, and we got it launched with a basic set of features. We had 3 different products at that point, and we grew it up from the bottom, and it eventually overtook the other products. And we now have 100% focus on Scout, and all of our development has been devoted to that for the last 5 years, which gives us, I think, incredible value. And our customers get a lot of value because we continue to add features to it. And I believe we're pretty much in the lead in the industry in terms of focusing on a console product, one single platform.
Excellent. So you've seen both sides of mentoring relationships, and what makes a good mentor-mentee relationship, in your opinion? What does that look like to you?
Well, obviously you got to have a level of trust and confidentiality. You got to pretty much exposure, here are my faults, I don't know what to do, or here's my challenges. You really have to be willing to listen, and sometimes that's hard for me. I can be stubborn. I like to bat ideas around, and but I think just having in my case, usually the mentors have had more experience than I. They've lived through things that were very similar, very adjacent, and they could relate. And I look back and I talk to somebody often. They'll be dealing with a problem, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I've seen that. And I just know with crystal clarity what they need to do. It's just, and the emotional objectivity of it. When you're too close to the problem, your vision is clouded by. And being emotionally objective, it's just here. You need to do that. And once you can accept that. But I still struggle to, not dismiss ideas too fast. I have to slow down.
So there's hope for engineers.
Some. There was for me.
Good.
This is from redemption, I think.
Yeah. So so you have an interesting story then. You went to school for engineering, but your career's in an engineering-related business. How long did you have to fake it?
Still am. I don't, I think people that have a measure of success are always worried about, am I good enough? Am I good enough? There's some tapes playing in all of our heads that,
right.
We have to get better. The people that think, hey, I've arrived, I've made it, I know all this stuff, I got it. Well, you need to be hungry to learn and consider that you don't know it all. And, I saw a graph one time that showed that, as people learn more, then they have a vision of how much they don't know. Your eyes are open more and more to that. So I don't know. I feel like I have a generally decent idea of how to do my job. I probably figured, maybe I started feeling that way like the last few months. But in a few months I'll feel like it was just the last few months again.
So what do you do for fun in your free time? So you're a busy guy.
I've had a lot of hobbies. I was talking to to a person here I know about cars. I used to do some auto racing, and I gave that up. And I've got another friend here who he's bad influence. I got to tell you. Next thing you know, I bought a timber farm, and I got some 4-wheelers, and go build a pond. And I just like to go out in the woods and run a chainsaw and play with a tractor. And it really kind of grounds you to get back to nature. And
It's too hot for flannel today, though, isn't it?
It's been warm.
So let's talk about entrepreneurial thinking. I think in a company like Avtec, it's 35 years of history. Obviously, you have to build in a lot of processes and to make things that make sure your operations run smoothly. Do you, or how do you encourage entrepreneurial thinking with your folks?
Well, I'd say there's nature and nurture. I mean, some people naturally are very, very bright in those areas, and we've got a few. I mean, there's even one in this room that we just kind of created a position and let them run with that ball, and it's created a lot of really cool stuff. And we kick ideas around, and we've got a lot of smart people, and some people are very, very process oriented, and they're looking to do repeatable stuff, and then other people, they're very creative. And when you're a small company, you have a lot of people that know everything that's going on. They have a lot of skills, and they scramble and makes things happen. And it's messy, but in the end, the customer is just like blown away. They're so happy with the result. You get a little bit bigger, then you have to start trying to create more repeatability. And those people have often, some grow, some have a hard time with that. And then you have some people that are very rigid and want to follow a process. And you got to have a good mix of those people. And I don't have an answer. I read lots of articles where companies are trying to figure out how to innovate, and I don't know that anybody is really completely solved that. Maybe Apple. I think they have a pretty good position. But
So you got a lot of people in the room that have either maybe they're getting ready to finish school, or they're starting a career, they're starting a business, maybe they have a business idea or new business. What advice or resources would you have for someone who's starting something new, particularly in the Midlands of South Carolina? Geography is important a lot of times to what we do. You guys are in Lexington, and chose to be there. You built a brand new, beautiful facility there. So what challenges do you see? What resources would you point to someone else?
Well, we're a 36-year-old company, and we're a little bit larger. So, I'm pretty far separated from the, one person in a garage thing. But obviously, this incubator is a great idea. You have a lot of infrastructure. I mean, the key is figuring out the thing you can do better than anybody else. Taking your idea and running with it, getting some good advice. Get some people that'll challenge your idea and let you look at it from different angles, because there's lots of ideas out there, and the first one it might sound great, and it might not be the one. And when you want to know that, like a mentor said, you want to know that up front.
Sure. And
find that out early. Not having to worry about all the the power bill and the internet and all that stuff makes the incubator sound very attractive. If I was starting a business today, I'd be over here.
We didn't, I didn't pay you to say that either.
Not yet.
Not yet. No, yeah.
Send you the invoice.
Okay, very good.
Just
So
kidding.
we'll turn it over for some audience questions here in a second. Was there anything like major we didn't cover here that you wanted to hit on? And we'll come back and let you give a closing thought too, but after. I've got a few extras in case they don't have anything. But
Why don't we take some questions
we
from
can
the
do that.
audience, and then I'll.
Can I have a volunteer to take this microphone? Hey, Laura, you're gonna.
I'm coming.
Okay, good deal. If you need it, I mean, you can just shout, whatever. Trey's got a question. Good job, Trey. You're a leader. Thank you.
So I'm curious to know, how did you know that Avtec Scout was the right product? And how did you go about verifying that with customers?
I'd say that it was a gut feeling. Scout it really does what our systems have always done. It just did it with a different architectural platform with a different amount of configurability. So we have done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of systems for all kinds of different people. And just because they're both railroads or two different systems or railroads doesn't mean they operate the same way. So over time, I think there's a lot of logic to how certain things, you solve certain problems. It's been very fascinating. We do a lot of work with Motorola, and we've had access at different times to talking to their engineers and looking at their competing platforms to ours. And several times we've looked at under the hood and like, gosh, you solved all those problems exactly the same way. So we just knew that if somebody could do it the way we were doing it, it would be very elegant. I mean, some examples are, one of the challenges is integrating all these different technologies together. So think about your PC. If you're in an office, there's 10 different printers, you just install 10 different printer drivers, right? Well, that's essentially what our gateway does. Is it has drivers for all the different technologies and translates it to a common language for the position. So, it's very modular. And just the fact that we could reduce the proprietary hardware down a lot, make it much easier. Now the software component is much higher, and of course it's overhead now and whatnot, cost of goods sold. But I think, and just taking input from customers. We rolled out. We used an agile process, and when we rolled out the system, it was definitely version 1.0, and it had limited capabilities. And then we started getting input from customers, and we've always had long lists of requests. I mean, much longer than you could ever do in a year. But over time, we started taking all those requests and mapping them with we use Salesforce.com, and we map those requests against opportunities that we have for sales, and we have a many-to-many relationship, so you can look up an opportunity and see what are the feature requests and what's the nature of those. They must have this, they'd like to have this would be nice. And then vice versa, you get a list of the features and you can see all the opportunities, and you go, gosh, we bid 10 projects here because we didn't have that feature. So it's an iterative process. You make general long-term roadmaps, and then you sort of you adjust them. They come into focus. They come out of the fog for the next release, and you have some good ideas about the one that's just over the horizon. So I don't know if that helped.
So first of all, a request and then a question. Since you just handled the American-US Air merger, if you, being an engineer, could reprogram the radios and everything to make them board the planes from the back to the front, and whoever the genius is that switched it, because a while ago they used to do it the other way, and it's a disaster now. So if you can fix that, that'd be great.
Okay.
So, Mike, there you go. That's one of those features
Where's my
must
phone?
have.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have my phone.
Or have a note card.
So the question is, you've been very successful in focusing on your niche, and really, I think you really own the niche that you're in. Is your plan for the future to expand the business into other areas you're not currently in, or go to other vertical markets and try and own those niches, and where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Well, I wouldn't want to tell my competitors too much.
Well, this is very private.
Yes, it's only on the.
There's a Motorola guy in the room, by the way.
No.
I don't know if you saw.
Oh, good. Motorola is a great company. They're our biggest competitor and our biggest partner. So we're frenemies, or we have cooperation. Anyway, very, 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 very good company, and we appreciate working with them. So about the boarding the aircraft, I can't reprogram the radios. I do my part. I usually ask the person in front of me behind, what's your seat number, and I rearrange the line that I can control. So the planes board a little bit better when I'm on them. It's an engineering thing, you get it. We're a small player in a pretty big market space, and there are the technologies that connect people are exploding. Used to be land mobile radios, push talk radios, licensed professional radios, mission critical radios were the only game in town, and now you have more. Nextel came out with, Motorola had that platform, push to talk, and now it's been replaced by things like AT&T's push to talk over cellular. There's standards for that, and you can even buy applications that run just on 4G networks on smartphones that give you some level of push-to-talk capability. So all those technologies may be mixed in the same business. For instance, you might have, say you have a county, you've got police, fire, EMS, and then you have dog catchers and the street service, and the premium noise canceling radios that will save a firefighter's life are too expensive to give to, the people that are hauling the trash. So you could have two different technologies in that same dispatching center, but you may need to talk to both of them. So we tie those together. So there's a lot of, I'd say, we have maybe 10% of the console market in North America. So there's room to grow in that niche, and we continue to plug away and work on that. And of course, we've got all kinds of little things we're working on, but we'll talk about those.
Top secret.
Well, medium secret maybe.
In the back.
Hi, so I came expecting more of an entrepreneur type person, but you're an engineer, which is awesome. That's really cool. I totally was like, oh my gosh, I know what this guy's talking about. I was actually wondering what your thoughts are on open source software in an organization like yours. And I also had like 12 other questions that I wanted to give you later, but that was just one.
Well, we've leveraged open source software for a few things from time to time, and I don't know if you're asking a question if I would want to open source my our code base. I can.
I wouldn't go as far as that exactly,
Yeah.
but just the percentage I'd say you leverage stuff like that.
I have to be honest. I don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about open source software. There's about we had I was in meetings all afternoon. We were doing some strategy meetings. We had a whiteboard, and it was just completely stuffed with all kinds of factors that are affecting our industry, all the way from even oil prices. I mean, when oil prices go down, like the Canadian economy where the oil sands are, they stop buying stuff. Airlines do great; they start buying stuff. Railroads, they're hauling oil. So there's so many things going on. I really don't know that I've got a great answer for you, but you can pick another question if you like. I'll give you another one.
So what percentage of your software development team is in-house versus like any sort of third-party groups like outsourcing?
We actually, as we grew, we've grown pretty rapidly. I mean, 20+% year over year in revenue, and we have been reinvesting continuously. So we're not, just raking in a lot of profits. We're pouring the money back into the organization. So as we grew, we struggled to find enough engineers, and so we tried outsourcing to several companies, and we had mixed success. We had, it was some good, some bad, and partially our fault too, partially their fault. So it's always a mix. Today we are almost all in-source. We have some individual contractors. When you find a great engineer, it almost doesn't matter where they are. If they fit the culture, they have the skills, you work with them. So we've got contractors in a number of different states, and then we'll fly them all in, and we'll do iteration planning and do some. It's worthwhile, the face-to-face time, and then of course we're using remote tools to collaborate. But really, we're doing it in-house, and I think that's a differentiator. We can control the quality and the priorities, and it's.
Kind of a follow-up to that then, with how difficult is it then for you to find the talent that you need here locally, and how often do you have to bring in folks from outside of South Carolina?
It depends on what it is.
Or outside of our region.
I read a presentation on innovation, and there was a comment I really liked. I haven't talked about it in a while. It said that context is worth 80 IQ points. I think 40 IQ points smart if you have it, 40 less if you don't. And so sometimes you just have to have the person with the context. And our industry is relatively small, so I've got two people on my leadership team that have joined in the last 6 months, and they both relocated here, and couldn't be happier that they did that. But generally, we're having very good luck in finding people locally that they hear about the company, and they know people that work there, and there'll be sometimes there'll be a downsizing or some other thing, and they'll raise their hand, and we do some referrals. And so I'd say our leader of HR's here. We probably get close to 90% of our people locally. Is that about right? 80 to 90%.
What about for
Oh, let me add,
Yeah, go
and we do have an intern program. We've had typically, 3 interns going.
It's right
Oh,
there. It's
yeah,
perfect.
I read it.
Yeah, it's great.
I'm really good at reading
Yeah,
upside down.
it's great.
And so we've had an intern program for quite some time. One of our other senior leaders who's here in the audience started that up, and it's been real successful. And we've hired a good number of our interns as full-time, engineers after they graduated.
Excellent. So who's the intern person?
Kevin.
Yeah.
Uh,
We've done that for about 4 years now.
Okay, great. So if you have questions about internships with Avtec, make sure you see Kevin afterwards. What other questions do you guys have?
He's got 11 more, I think.
Yeah, I do.
No, you just gotta email those. You gotta email those, man. So what do you want to leave us with? I want to give you a chance to kind of wrap up, maybe leave us with a little word of wisdom. What's the take home? What have you, what served you well in your career?
Really it's about surrounding yourself with good people, focus on culture and really, I really like being anybody that's continuously curious, always trying to learn something new. I think a lot of our most successful people are that way. I have a level of that. You get busy sometimes. You don't read as much as you should, but being curious, getting input from others, especially people that have having them challenge your ideas. It really helps. Sometimes it's painful. Sometimes I don't behave well, but. I think that we talked about the Midlands. This is a really good. South Carolina's a great place to have a business. I mean, we've got good, a variety of advantages. I mean, when you ask people to relocate here, it's not a hard discussion. Lexington County, beautiful place, the lake. We've got a nice facility, and we try to have a great place to work. And I don't know. I think networking on LinkedIn is a good thing. I try not to connect with people I don't know, but anytime somebody asks me, hey, can you help me with X? I just try to help them, and if you don't worry about what I get back, and find you get it back other ways. So.
That's good advice. And I want to thank Michael Branning once again for joining us.